So this video may seem controversial. We're going to talk about seller concessions. I've talked about concessions quite a bit over the years, off and on, and it tends to be one of these things that, at least from my perspective, seems like one of the simplest adjustments. If you have a concession and it's a cash concession, it's a transfer of dollars at closing from seller to buyer, then if we're looking to achieve a cash equivalent price, and we're looking to value only the real estate and not personal property, well, if that cash concession transfer is pretty easy to quantify in the vast majority of cases. An $8,000 concession like the one we see for this sale would have an $8,000 impact on price. The net price that the seller received after concessions, after transferring that cash from the seller to the buyer, in this case was $8,000 less than this $287,000 price. So their real price of the real estate, not the cash that they were paid to transfer, was $279,000. As simple as that seems to me, and there are nuance, when we talk about transaction costs, there are some occasions, this is common in new construction, where you have maybe a market where the vast majority of resales, the seller will pay the title policy, but on new construction, they require the buyer to pay the title policy. That's a common arrangement in my market, and in that type of arrangement, to make the transaction costs equivalent to what is overall typical for the market, well, the transaction costs for the buyer are higher with new construction. And there's often a seller concession that is essentially recognizing a portion of that difference. So that would be sort of a nuance of how to look at that. But let's just, for now, let's just look at a more typical scenario where you might have an appraiser conclude, and often it's based on what the typical concession amount might be. They see, oh, well, yeah, there's a lot of concessions in the market right now, and I'm going to say it's typical to have 3% concessions. So they'll come to this sale, and $8,000 is close to 3% of the $287,000 price, and they would conclude no adjustment. That's typical. We don't need to adjust for that. So I would hear that a lot. You would see that a lot if you're watching this and you're a reviewer. You probably see that all the time. And then you might see that for this comp, there's a $15,000 concession and a $300,000 price. That's 5%. And so they would say, okay, well, then I'll adjust $6,000 for that one. That would be the 2% that's higher than typical. But what you never see, or I have never seen, if you've seen this, let me know. Here's a sale that has no concession, but I've never seen an appraiser make a positive adjustment. And if you are saying that I do not need to adjust for the $8,000 on this comp, then that means that you need to make a positive 3% adjustment on the sale with no concessions, because what you are saying is the typical transaction cost in the market includes a 3% cash transfer. Well, that 3% cash transfer didn't take place on this sale. So if we're going to achieve equivalency within our system, a transactional equivalent price, then a $7,500 positive adjustment would be required. My question is, has anybody ever seen this? And would it even be acceptable? I suggest that that there would be very few, if any, underwriters, reviewers that would accept that adjustment, and rightly so, in my opinion. And if you won't accept this adjustment, then my question is, why are you accepting this one?